Well, welcome to today's educational webcast titled Budget Planning for All Generations. So we will look at, believe it or not, 6 different generations, going from what they call the builder's generation to a newest one they're calling the alpha generation, which is kind of newborns to age 11. So I'm sure next year there'll be yet another group. As we always do, brief disclosure, anything we talk about today is educational only. If you need specific advice on budgeting, accounting, your own financial planning, please refer to your own advisors. So with that, let's get started. So I think we're fairly clear, at least intuitively, common sense, why you have a budget. But I think the myth is maybe you need more of a budget when you first get out of school or you first start a job or, you're in the middle of a career or at the end of a career, or you're retired. I would suggest to you that all the stages of your life kind of planning, financial planning, you need a budget. And certainly one could argue in retirement, where you may be more on a fixed income, you need to be even more careful about a budget. So we're going to talk about today kind of how you get that roadmap for your long-term goals. Again, a lot of this you might look at it and say, oh, geez, here we go again. I know I'm not as smart with my money every month. I should be more careful. I'll raise my hand as well. I mean, we're all guilty. Let's try to get our arms around a little more of that overspending. Again, difficult. Anthony here in my office, who's got 3 young kids, he can tell you, I mean, his food budget is exponentially increased, over the last 5-6 years. So that's something maybe you can't really reduce, be it the needs, the housing, utility bill, the food, etc. But there are certainly other areas of wants that you can eliminate. We all want to improve how we save. This is retirement savings. This is saving for the house. This is saving to maybe prepay some loans, get rid of some bad debts. So we all understand the importance of the budget. And then it gives us a chance to kind of analyze it. Where are we spending our money? What is it that is consuming us every month, every quarter, every year? Is there something beyond the obvious that we're missing? So I think the thing about, again, today's discussion with you is looking at the different generations should help us all understand better ourselves, maybe where we came from, the history of our own group, if you will. Also can, I think, help each generation learn from one another. So the builders, this is the Depression, if you will, era. People that are coming out of the Depression, World War I, World War II. My dad will be 90 this July, so he's certainly in this category. And I would suggest to you, I remember like yesterday, growing up with him, always saying, I mean, I'm one of 6 kids, so a big group. But I remember him always saying he had $200 or $300 in cash in his wallet, it seemed, at all times. And he was by no means a wealthy man. He was a principal of school, but he always used to say, I'm not going to buy it if I don't have the cash in my wallet to buy it. In other words, translation, I'm not going to extend myself beyond my means. Easier said than done. And I think we can take a lot of philosophy of that generation and apply it to any era that we're in, including today. The baby boomers, this would be me. This is more that group. I would suggest it's in that kind of age 59 to 77 range, maybe preparing more for retirement, looking more towards future income. That generation saw, again, a lot of the builders, as I mentioned, I certainly observed how frugal my parents were. But we also, the boomers, became part of the credit card introduction. It probably happened, late 60s or so, Visa, MasterCard. So, we're a little more in touch with that end of spending, good or bad, but, gave us some reasonable leverage to do purchases. Gen X is kind of that age 43 to 58. That group tends to be more sensitive to really doing a deep dive and researching. I use the automobile purchase, before they buy anything. They're going to dig in now. That maybe they were a little more exposed to the internet, growing up, a little more exposed to that kind of opportunity. They had to do research that way. So that, the automobile purchase is a good example. Should I do an electric car? Should I do fossil fuels? Should I do a hybrid? If I end up doing business with you, XYZ dealer, Are you gonna service my car? You know, how does that work? How long have you guys been in business? You know, all those kind of questions. Generation Y, you know, that will tend to be the group kind of in that range of 27 to 42. One of my children will be kind of considered in this range generation. Definitely big into the research too, but they have probably some of the highest debt. And a lot of it, unfortunately, is from the college, the graduate school, higher ed. Certainly gotten involved in a very expensive education. In terms of that generation, again, Generation Y, they definitely, spend more on food, takeout, those areas, splurge a little more on kind of the experience, type of travel or trip. So then we get to Gen Z, which would be probably my next child, kind of age 11 to 26. That group certainly is very savvy and shrewd on online and looking up. They have a savings mindset, which is interesting when we look at the statistical data, of this group. They want to save because they saw certainly, probably might be in the parent, that baby boomer generation, being more frugal, saving. But they're also more interested in luxury items, the designer clothes, the designer jewelry, that type of thing. And they as well, like Gen Y, have spent a lot of money on education, higher education. So, they'll for sure be paying more of their earned income towards debt payment. And then, as I mentioned at the outset, we have this sixth generation called Generation Alpha, which should kind of be newborn to like age 11. The hope is that they're hearing, seeing, observing, different ways to save, different ways to budget. I would suggest, like no other generation, certainly Gen Z and Gen Alpha, they're going to be doing everything, likely on their phone, likely on their tablet, laptop, in terms of the technology to help them budget, to help them save, to help them invest. So taking a quick look as a breakdown, I went through a fair amount of it, but just look at this, briefly in terms of each generation and kind of some bullet points. The builders, again, coming from that Depression era and the World War I, World War II, definitely more selective, definitely cash oriented. Spent the least on education. That's because a lot of them, I think, did the VA bill. That doesn't mean they didn't get educated, but they spent a little less, than other generations. The boomers, again, this kind of my group, that age 59 to 77, we definitely push a lot harder on getting more value. For our experience, I use the automobile purchase, or maybe buying new furniture for the home. We're definitely a little less frugal than the builders. I don't have a total cash mentality, that my parents might have had, but I'm definitely careful. I can't say that I'm a huge fan of Venmo and, all these auto pay areas, but I understand its growth and I understand its application. We definitely, are eager to budget. I would say I'm careful about that. Not that I'm necessarily in the business, but I've always had that mentality. And we were in that generation where the credit cards came in. We understand the use of them and the value. Gen X, again, this particular age group, this is again from all statistical research. Similarly to Gen Y, they're going to research, before they make a purchase. And why? Because again, they've grown up more with the internet. And they've certainly maybe observed, the other generations run into maybe some issues with money. So they want to be more careful before they spend. They want things that are convenient. And that third bullet about insurance, I think, is more related to, again, maybe they observe Gen X more issues with the older generation, maybe having medical issues, maybe having some other related issues and needing insurance that paid a lot of the bill. So it's funny, they spend more on insurance, medical plans than a lot of other generations, which is an interesting find. Entertainment, big deal to this generation. The rock and roll concerts, the sporting events, travel. I must confess, I'm a sports junkie myself, so I would definitely fit into that bullet, spending more on entertainment. The millennial, again, tend to be, maybe those of you listening have children in this age bracket. nieces, nephews, grandkids. You know, again, the research is a big deal. Again, driven for sure by their background, you know, being so savvy and shrewd about using the internet, you know, the old search engines. Now we have ChatGPT that helps you research. But again, that automobile example I gave, the house purchase, furniture for the home, you know, some expensive item, getting more into the college planning if that applies to you and your children, you know, digging into that. Again, the debt though is an issue. You know, some more money is being spent on servicing the debt. Takeout food, I'm not sure I understand the Uber Eats and, you know, coming home at 9:30, 10 at night after a long day and you order online and get your Uber Eats, but it's a big deal, you know, with this group. I might also suggest though, I could even apply this to Gen X, Gen Y, somewhat even to the builders. There's a group called Blue Apron, which lets you do like a 30-day purchase of all your meals or 2 meals a day. And I have a number of retired clients that swear by that. So I wouldn't necessarily put that in the takeout of, you know, I want to get the, you know, there's a real super nice Asian restaurant around the corner from where you live, or Indian restaurant or Italian restaurant. But, you know, related to kind of takeout food, you could suggest that, you know, people use the food purchase rather than go to the grocery store. And experiences, again, is a big deal with the millennials. So here's Gen Z, you know, younger, maybe up to 26. Again, the idea behind giving you some background on all these generations is to get a mindset that you're more comfortable with, plug yourself into one of these generations, and maybe you get a little more confident in your own budgeting and why, you know, things you might be overlooking. Still have a savings mindset, which is interesting. Again, my youngest son would be 26 just, so he would be in this group. He definitely has a savings mindset, but for sure that second bullet, the luxury items, the designer clothes, the not really a jewelry person, but you know, I certainly know and the groups of this age are more into that. Apps are a big deal, right? In terms of this group, phone apps, that is. And then of course the education cost. So let's get into some basic components here to help you with your budgeting. This rule of thumb has been around for a long time. Kind of call it the financial planning pie chart. 50% of your, I'm going to use a gross monthly pay, let's say is $8,000, your gross pay, whether it's you, your household, whatever it is. So 50% of that $4,000 is your needs. Call it your walls. That's your housing, your utilities, your food, things you have to have. 20% is that savings part, the debt repayment. You know, hopefully maybe you can turn that dial a little bit. But I'd say that blue section of the pie is pretty constant. You know, that what, you know, you want to take your take home pay, your gross pay, whatever. 50% of that you're generally going to spend in that need area. And 30% is wants. It's the trips, the travels, the experience. So think about your take home or your gross pay, take a look at your pay stub, apply that formula, and that will help you a lot. So here's the quick summary. Here are the needs, you know, call it the four walls. You have housing, obviously utility, and I put utility in there. I put Netflix, I put Peacock, I put Amazon. I put those services. They've kind of become almost part of everyone's house. You know, that's where you have your movie experiences, more events are going, you know, these certain services versus the what we call national TV channels. Food expenses is non-takeout. Transportation, again, automobile, maybe you commute somewhere, but this is the basis of a good budget. Then you got the wants. That's the 30% of that chart we looked at. Personal care, you know, you need to have grooming, you need to, you know, pedicures, manicures, you know, all those areas. Clothing, again, you know, basic clothing. I do like nice clothing myself, but, you know, is this more, you like the designer or you like a certain brand? You know, it's a lot more expensive. Entertainment, sporting, rock and roll concerts, travel, experience, takeout, hobbies. Hobbies, again, can be difficult because I think hobbies is very important to get a, you know, maintain an open mind, if you will, a clear head kind of takes you away. And maybe you're into art, maybe you're into woodworking, maybe you're into collectibles. You know, you like to collect certain sports memorabilia, certain collectibles. Under hobbies, yeah, that's a want, but there is a part of that I think that's healthy. And vacations too are healthy, but it is a want, you know, if you look at the budget picture. And then savings and, you know, debt repayment. Emergency fund, I suggest 3 months. of your take home pay, being an emergency fund. High yield savings, like I've not seen since probably the late 80s, the high yield earnings now on accounts. I would liken it to Marcus, is a Goldman Sachs bank, paying 4.4 on just cash savings. American Express has a high yield account. Credit cards, some of them have a very good high yield opportunity. Capital One comes to mind, is one of those that's in that segment. If you don't have your cash in one of those three I just mentioned, look seriously at that, because you can get 4.3, 4.4%. Retirement, this is over and above what you're doing at work. Roth accounts are, I think, a huge tax-free item, more important than sometimes pre-tax, because what you pay when you take money out of a retirement plan can be just as crucial in your planning as what tax write-off you had going into the retirement. Investments, maybe you're interested in stocks, you want to get more into purchases in that way. 529 college plan, health savings accounts are becoming not just a part of work-related benefits, but more and more discussion, dialogue about it, white papers about a health savings account, which you can put money in pre-tax for unknown medical expenses, being a supplemental account, because you can take them with you if you leave a company, and you can accumulate more money in them as you go from employer to employer, and they usually can allow you to invest the money. Paying off debt, that's a big deal. Obviously, we talked about Gen Y, Gen X, millennials. Paying down debt is a crucial part of doing your budget. So here I give you, to kind of wrap this up, a budget sheet. Take a minute. You can either type in, this will be kind of like a DocuSign document you can type in, or you can just print it out and write down your budget. But I'd encourage you to do this, give yourself, reasonable time to kind of look at it together, your partner, significant other. At least do this once a year. You don't have to be maybe as fastidious about it once a month, once a quarter, but I think this will give you a good roadmap to better understanding where your income and expenses are, and maybe some changes you can make. So here we are in a new year, New Year's resolution. If you've gone through this kind of phase, maybe you're going through another marriage, second marriage, and maybe you're going through just getting married, and maybe just getting out of school, and you haven't maybe pushed as hard on the savings. Here's an opportunity, I think, to kind of identify what your income and expenses are. Some phone apps just to pull it together, but as we were talking yesterday with a client, the Mint app, I think, is your best opportunity to not only have a budget type app on your phone, but this allows you to pull in all your other savings accounts. But the Mint app will be closing in a couple months, 60 days or so, but it's going to what's called Credit Karma. That'll be the new Mint app replacement. And what I believe is going to happen is there'll be a small fee on Credit Karma, where Mint is now no charge. YNAB, you need a budget. Honeydew is a decent one, NerdWallet, but for sure the best, I think most functional, practical application has been Mint. I don't see it changing when it becomes Credit Karma, but just FYI that there will be an update to that app.